Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a GoPro Wrestling exclusive studio shoot interview with none other than Oregon's finest, the master of the full Nelson, Billy Jack Haynes. Billy Jack Haynes, thank you so much for joining us here in the studio. It is an honor to have you.
It's an honor to have you. Hey, I heard about your father, and I'm very, very sorry.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I know you're going through a big loss right now, so we'll do the best we can to get through
this
together.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. We pulled a lot of questions, Billy, from all our social media platforms, and you could follow us at GoPro Wrestling. I mean, YouTube, Facebook, especially Facebook and Instagram. We've got a lot of questions actually, and we'll touch into it. We're gonna go around your career through personal life, tragedies, whatnot, and we'll get right to it. How did you break into the wrestling business?
Broke in 1982 in Calgary, Alberta. Now there's some long stories behind all this, and this form may or may not be, as we go into this year interview, they may be brought up later, but there's reasons for breaking into pro wrestling. I got into pro wrestling by kind of accident. I wanted to be a professional boxer at first. A lot of my family was, and I ended up in the pro wrestling ranks there. I started with Stu Hart in Calgary, Alberta with Stampede Wrestling.
Oh, okay. And Stu Hart's training, what were some of the things that you learned from him or that you've taken away from him?
Well, Stu Hart was, there's an old saying that it's like in the horse racing industry, you come from certain trainers, they look at the horse like it's going to win the Kentucky Derby, whatever. If you trained at Stu Hart's dungeon in Calgary, Stampede Wrestling, every promoter in the country at the time, because they had individual territories, they didn't have a single territory like the WWE has taken over everything. There was like 10, 15, 20 different territories, and you broke in there at Calgary, at the Stampede Wrestling and the dungeon. They looked at you like you were a main eventer right away.
Absolutely. One of the you mentioned territories. None other than Don Owens in the Portland territory. I mean, you're from Oregon. Well, how did Don Owens treat you in the Portland territories?
Man, Don Owens was the best. Our family, we grew up on Portland wrestling, like a lot of people did. It was like before cable. There was we were on Portland wrestling started at the same time as the local news.
Did you grow up in Oregon your entire life?
Yeah, I grew up. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon, and Oregon City, Oregon. But Portland wrestling was on since I think the early 40s, 50s, or post World War II. And so yeah, Don Owens was the man. Another
wrestler who lived in Oregon, famous in Oregon, Roddy Piper. What were your initial impressions of meeting Piper?
Piper and I became really, really good buds, and we had to stay kind of low key, always in our career for some reason. And but when he died, like half of me died. There was a portion of me still thinks that he was murdered, and we can't really. That's another litigation problem we can't go into right now, but. Just to have a heart attack as healthy as he was, there's something didn't smell or it did not pass the finger test with me.
Later on we actually have a question I remember from a Facebook fan. He actually asked about the whole Stone Cold Steve Austin and Piper podcast fiasco. I mean, I think you brought it up on one of your Facebook posts, if you recall. Do you have any recollection on that?
Oh, you're talking about the Stone Cold Steve
right.
Austin? Well, yeah.
Like what I'm saying is, do you think that attributed to his death at all?
Well, people, they have their own opinions, and that's fine. All wrestling fans can have their own opinion of me and of the situation with Stone Cold and Roddy, but they were on podcast one, and he did an imitation of Stone Cold. Somebody did an imitation, and it was really a good imitation. And Stone Cold Steve Austin didn't like it, and they had got into a verbal altercation, because that's what the witnesses said. And Roddy, 3 days later, had a massive heart attack. Before he had the heart attack, he was fired by Vince off podcast one, and that's 3 days later he was dead. So he hit me really wrong in the stomach. He was like a gut punch to me, and really, are you allowed to cuss in these podcasts?
Yeah, you could say whatever you want.
Man, I really hate to cuss because being a Christian now, it was just a really Stone Cold is to me gutless. He beats up on women. Vince McMahon keeps him in. He married my ex-wife, Jean Clark.
Who was Lady Blossom, for a lot of people who don't know.
Lady Blossom, who was in pro wrestling for a while, was boyfriend, girlfriend, had a kid with the late Chris Adams, who was murdered in Dallas, Texas, got shot. Good guy, I mean, wasn't drinking. Great guy. And then for him to beat women up and still be a part of the WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it, it just shows Vince the way Vince really is. You know, he likes to be around guys that homosexuals and people who beat women up.
We're going to get into that later on.
Oh, well, you know, I'm going to tell it to you straight, man.
Yeah, I could see that's coming. I mean, do you listen to any wrestling podcasts today?
You know, I was on a podcast that just had, because the guy had so much class, it was called something suplex, military industrial suplex. And he only had a couple hundred listeners, but the guy was so professional with me, I went ahead and did it anyway. And he was very knowledgeable about wrestling. His name is Tom Batista, and whether it's WrestleMania, 100,000 people, or I wrestled in front of 50.
Yeah.
So.
You were active on Facebook with your fans a lot. A lot of fans were disappointed when you disappeared from Facebook. Why did you stop posting?
I stopped posting due to the attorney-client. I started the lawsuit in 2014 with a guy named Bill Kairos, who had sued and defeated the NFL for $1 billion. So I got to thinking that Vince owed me probably $250,000 in royalties, and I got a hold of Vince in WWF or WWE headquarters, and he told me I couldn't rub two quarters together. And when he told me that, I said, Vince, you just told the wrong guy that, because I'm going to go ahead and sue you now. He goes, you can't do that because you don't got the money to do it. I got a hold of the NFL attorneys that wanted $1 billion, and that's exactly what we're suing Vince for, is $1 billion. Even though we lost the first round, the second round in the appellate court's coming up. We win that, got a good chance to win $1 billion, and the boys can get paid, and maybe a union can be formed. And like Jesse Ventura wanted to do in WrestleMania 3.
So that's a rumor that it's actually true. Jesse Ventura wanted to start a union?
Absolutely, 100% true. I wanted to back him on it too. It never came back around me, because at that time I was so blown away with drug addiction from injuries.
So what happened? Why wasn't it successful?
Because nobody backed it up. And then Hulk Hogan didn't want it, because 10% of the, I believe it was 10% of the gross gate, live gate was going to Hulk. So it wouldn't behoove him individually to have a union, where it would behoove me and all the other wrestlers. But I took that wrong also. I thought that was the wrong thing on Hulk to do.
While we're on the subject of WWE, we'll touch a lot about WWE later, but what are your thoughts of the WWE Hall of Fame?
I think it's, honestly, I think it's not a bad idea. But when you put like Arnold Schwarzenegger and I think Sylvester Stallone and people that have just had like one match, or just, it kind of makes a joke of it.
Well, to be fair, they have like their celebrity wing, and I think they're trying to attract a broader audience from the celebrity side of it. But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Listen, man, when you've had 2,000-3,000 matches like I've had, and my name isn't mentioned, and I don't really care if it is or it isn't, but when you've had those kind of matches and WrestleManias and all that, and you're not in it, and they'll take a guy as an actor or an actress and put him in, I just think it makes kind of a joke of the WWE Hall of Fame.
All right, would you accept the Hall of Fame induction from the WWE if they called you?
Absolutely, 100% not.
Why not?
It's just not my gig. You know, I don't believe in it. Just kind of like what I just told you. If it was legitimate, if they stayed with just the talent themselves, right?
So you don't like the process of how they acquire Hall of Famers per se, of how they induct a performer or a celebrity.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
fair enough. King Kong Bundy recently passed away. What were your memories of King Kong Bundy?
I talked to him 2 weeks before he passed away, and he's on the lawsuit. There's 61 wrestlers that are on the lawsuit, and he was one of them. And he was talking fine. Everything was great. So this is something that had to be a massive heart attack. I know he had diabetes, and it's a big, big loss for the
He's
pro
actually a friend of mine
industry.
as well. It is a big loss for everybody
Yes,
involved
it
with
is,
it.
sure.
Without, going deep into the lawsuit, because I know there's a pending lawsuit, we can't touch on it too much. But for a lot of fans wondering, what is this lawsuit about? Like a brief summary of it. What does it entail?
Well, it entails concussions, like in the NFL.
Okay, the NFL, right. Okay.
The NFL, you get concussed almost every game. And you bruise your brain, it's like, for instance, if you bruise your arm, it turns purple or whatever. Well, you can see it on the outside. When you bruise your brain, you cannot see it on the inside. And so you continue to bang your head over and over and over again. You'll get what's called a CTE, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's called a concussion. And there was a movie with Will Smith came out called Concussion in 2016, I think it was.
Yes.
January 2016. Great movie. I watched it. And listen, I'm starting to slur my words. Piper, hey, I got just a minute. Oh, dummy here forgot to turn his phone off.
That's all right.
Hang on.
That's okay.
Hello? Hey, you're never going to guess what I'm doing right now. I know it is, but you know what I'm doing? I'm doing an interview. I'm doing an interview live right now.
With GoPro Wrestling. You never know what's going to happen here on GoPro Wrestling.
That's why I keep it on, man, because it's a shoot.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We got a question from Instagram. Thoughts on Donald Trump? Are you political? Are you into politics at all?
I'm not into politics, but hey, personally, I think he's doing a great job. I wish I could say he wasn't, because we're suing Vince. We're suing Vince McMahon. But I think that
Trump's a good friend of Vince.
He's a good friend of Vince, and I call a spade a spade. I think he's done what he said he's going to do, and no other president so far I've seen has done that. So yeah, I'm a Trumper.
All right. Thoughts on NXT?
I've just heard a little bit about it. It's like a training camp for the.
It's a developmental for WWE, right?
I think it's a smart move on Vince's part to do. I mean, for the future.
Right.
So you got people always in the future over here to come into the WWE.
Billy, do you watch the current product of WWE?
I don't. Now, every now and again, I'll get a heads up, and then I'll watch it.
You never channel surf and stop and say, hey, let me catch a little bit of what's going on here on Monday night?
I have my heart cut out of the industry, and it happens. It happened to Dr. D. David Schultz. It happened to me. It's happened to a lot of guys. But
when you say your heart was cut out, you mean like you're turned off from the business? What exactly?
Well, here's my situation. Say like it was Florida Championship Wrestling with Gordon Sully and Eddie Graham and so forth, and you had territories back then, and you were home every day. And the fans don't understand, when Vince took over every territory, and then in 86, 87, when I was in the WWF, we wrestled 320 to 330 days a month, or pardon me, a year, which was basically 7 days a week. And when you were hurt, you had to wrestle hurt. There's no union. Now, if I was paying you $10,000 to $14,000 a week to wrestle, and then all of a sudden I say, like, I'll take it away from you if you got a broken arm, but you can't wrestle. If you don't wrestle, I'm taking your money away from you. You're going to wrestle. So you make the injury worse. So Vince had a bunch of doctors, like Doctors O'Horian, Aston, and 4 or 5 others. And usually you go to a doctor, you write a prescription for pain medication. Well, we get it basically for free. You go into Hershey, Pennsylvania, or you could just order it Federal Express like Vince did. And that's where the addiction part of it came in, and that's where the deaths came in. All these guys that died at such a young age, and it's not really, it's like I said before in my last interview, Vince was the professional wrestling pimp, and the wrestlers were the professional wrestling prostitutes. Now, you get a prostitute high on a drug, and they get addicted to the drug and the road and the fame. You're going to go ahead, you don't even care about the money anymore. The drug addiction takes over. And a lot of guys probably won't admit it, but you just look at the death rate in pro wrestling, in the WWF, WWE.
How rapid was the drug scene in the 80s, Billy?
It was extremely bad. I mean,
we're not trying to get into names, but like, was it more like were a lot of guys doing cocaine? Like, what was the big thing in the 80s? Like,
well, there's another thing we could talk about too. You know, a lot of people know that, you know, I was a drug trafficker myself, cocaine. As far as how deep it was deep. But I can't get into the litigant part of it because of the lawsuit. I'd love to, believe me, I would, but I can't.
You mentioned you were a drug trafficker. How did that all come about?
Well, that happened when I was about, in 1975, 76 is when I first started, in 78. In fact, I was the very first ever, like I said, I'm bragging to you, but Andy Gibb of the Bee Gees bought his very first cocaine from me, and he got addicted, and he ended up dying at 30. So that really makes me feel like a really big, tough guy, you know, and just basically cut my heart out of it. You know, he was a great guy, Andy Gibb.
When did you stop selling or distributing?
There was two boys that were killed on a railroad track in Arkansas, and that also is in possible litigation, and probably shouldn't be talking about it.
That's fair.
But it was pretty much right after that.
The reason I'm asking is to like create the awareness of like the drug. I mean, today in you know wrestling now, I don't know if it's very rapid. You know, I'm not exactly sure. I'm not in the locker room with a lot of these guys, but I mean, it's widely known like throughout the 80s or early 90s there was a lot of drug use. So that's why I was asking you about it.
Well, there was, but you got to understand once again in the 80s. This is a thing where Vince was taken to court on in, I think it was 91, 92, 93, the Doctors O'Horian trial, and how he got off, I don't know. He should have went to jail, but I think it was superstar Billy Graham spoke on his behalf because he was paid some money, and some other guys did, and they did what they had to do to survive, but it got Vince off, and Vince didn't serve any time in jail, or he would have lost the WWF right then and there. Zahorian got 8 years in prison. Then he tries to act like he's come clean, and then Dr. Aston, on down the road with the Benoit family and all the other wrestlers, they ended up dying 2006, 5, Eddie Guerrero. The list goes on, and he acts like he cleaned the industry up, but Vince knows he didn't clean the industry up. Oh, the wellness program and so forth. These guys died at an alarming rate. A rate that was combined in every pro sport. Pro wrestling was #1. All combined, any pro sport was probably 3 or 4 times stronger in wrestling.
Do you attribute the deaths in wrestling at a young age also the fact that the grueling schedule, there's no off-season the way they have football, basketball, Major League Baseball? I mean, professional wrestling, it's not a team sport. I mean, in a way it is when you're in the ring with somebody, but traveling 300, I mean, you guys in the 80s were traveling 300 plus days a year, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get out earlier, and probably, I think the phone call, I don't know if it would, but,
That's fine.
Yeah, it was a hectic schedule. Vince knew it. And
How often were you guys home in the? I'm just, you know, as a fan myself, like, were you guys ever home in the '80s? Like, I mean, I mean, it's just like, I'm looking in the old almanac of all the matches. You guys did double shots, triple shots. Like, it's like you guys never went home. You were like Iron Man.
yeah, it's once again, it's what got a lot of wrestlers killed and divorced. You're married to the road, but when you wrestle with these injuries, and over again, you bang your head, your back, and another thing, really chicken shit thing you did, Vince. I mean, I just can't. This is something I got to bring up. Is that when we filed this lawsuit in 2014, you know, I was the catalyst of the very first one, and now there's a class action with 61. I sued for $5 million for hepatitis C and a number of other things. Now that's besides the point, Vince. That's just you and me. Then it was Blackjack Mulligan, Kamala, Dynamite Kid. Everybody's in his wheelchair. Ivan Koloff. So he wouldn't have to pay anything to these guys. He filed a lawsuit on these guys that were in a wheelchair. And in other words, now they can't. They were never going to get any money ever again out of Vince. And that was kind of a low blow, because now Ivan Koloff has passed away. Dynamite Kid is dead. Kamala is such a great guy, he's almost passed away. And Blackjack Mulligan did die, and so did Dynamite Kid.
Yeah.
So.
Another person, a young man that passed away too soon, Tom Zink. You have a lot of memories with Tom Zink.
Tom, you know, this is something I probably shouldn't say, but I'm going to say it. Tom was with the Can-Am Connection, and in the litigation that we have right now, you know, my attorney would say, shut your mouth, but I'm not going to shut my mouth, because this needs to be told. Tom Zink was raped in his hotel room, was date raped by several wrestlers or promoters like Pat Patterson, and there's 4 or 5 others. He told me about it, and it just absolutely destroyed him. And he went to Vince about it. Vince turned his head to it, and next thing you know, the Can-Am Connection was history, and it became Strike Force with Tito Santana. And then Tom Zink went deeply into drugs, into alcohol. A couple times cried on my shoulder. I loved the kid, loved the guys from Minnesota, Brady Boone, a lot of guys from Minnesota. It was a great talent pool from Minnesota. And another thing is sexual abuse. You got the Me Too program with women. Well, the Me Too can be with men too. And it happened to a lot of guys. It happened to Roddy Piper, it happened to Tom Zink, happened to Hercules Hernandez, happened to Rick Rude, and it happened to me.
Would you like to share at all what happened to you?
I don't remember much. That's the whole thing about being date raped. You know, it's a date rape drug. It's put into your drink or whatever you have, orange juice, whatever you're drinking. And what happened with me, I'll share it with you. First time I've ever shared it with anybody, so this is the first. In 1988, I was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, or Rochester, New York, TV. At the end of 1987, when I was making a little bit of a comeback, I was supposed to wrestle Hulk Hogan in WrestleMania 4, as I was going to turn heel with the full Nelson. And I remember that. But I remember going to my room and talking to Vince, and we had a partial beer, and then I went to the bathroom, and that's when I was hit probably with the date rape pill. I started getting woozy, and I remember I made it to the bed. I woke up probably about 8 hours, 9 hours later, missed my flight, and I'm in my wrestling boots. They're not tied. I'm completely naked, except for my Billy Jack hat covering my groin area. And then I have semen all over my face and my mouth. And I guess they call that the squared circle jerk. Now, can I prove it? No. Have I hid it? Yes, because I'm ashamed of it. You know, I was molested as a kid by 2 politicians in Oregon. I'm thinking about naming names and writing a book like a lot of guys do, but I don't know if I ever go about doing it. But if I do, it'd be heavy duty.
Are these 2 people, politicians, are they still in office today? Are they?
No, sir. No, they have both passed away, and that's the other thing. When you talk about someone who passed away, they can't defend themselves, you know. But when you're 4 years old, you can't defend yourself either, can you?
Was that the age the first time that's happened to you?
Yeah, when I was 4 years old, I was not just molested, but I had cigarettes. You can probably, I don't know if you can see them from here, but I had cigarettes put out on me. I had probably 9 cigarettes put out on me. Yeah. And I got a cigar put out on me here by the people that abused me, the politicians that abused me. And look, I'm not looking for pity from anybody who wants to write in or say that I am. I'm not. There's a lot of people that have been molested sexually out there, and then they keep it all the way to their grave, and which is what I was going to do. Did you tell anyone as a child? Did you confide in anyone and tell them what happened? Well, my mother knew. You know, my mother knew, and that's what hurts so bad, because I love my mother so much, and there's a lot about my family that I haven't said that I can go into. Now isn't the time about my family, but it was a brutal thing, you know, when you're looking for love and your dad's working and your mother's messing around on your dad, and with these other guys, and these other guys take and abuse you physically and sexually. And then you say something, and I don't know, like right now, what is 50-some years ago? No, I take it back, 60 now. I'm 65, so 61 years ago that was now. Wow. People will say, well, what are you bringing it up now for? Yeah. I don't know how we could segue into something else, but we'll try. Let's talk about world-class championship wrestling. You worked for Fritz von Erich. What were your initial impressions and memories working for Fritz? Well, first of all, I'm going to say it's one heck of a jump. Yeah, that's a 4-year-old. I didn't want to. No, that's all right. That's why I told you. I said just write them down and randomly, like you did. Yeah. That's the way to do it when you're conducting an interview. Yeah. You know. What's your question again? How did you wind up in world class championship wrestling, Fritz von Erich? I got stymied by Fritz. Fritz von Erich at the time, you know, my gimmick, Billy Jack, was over really good in Florida, and I was also at that time a cocaine trafficker in Florida. Every town I went to, I would sell a kilo of cocaine. So I was not a good guy. So I don't expect people to look at me in the lens and say I was. And Fritz von Erich wanted me to come there and babysit his kids, the von Erichs. And they wanted me to be Billy von Erich instead of Billy Jack. And I said, well, Fritz, I've already got a gimmick. And I talked to Eddie about it, and Eddie said, well, try it for a little bit. You can. What we're really thinking about is running cocaine through Texas. That's what we were thinking about doing. Wow. So it really wasn't about wrestling. It was about cocaine, also in Florida, and also now going to Texas with it. And then Eddie mysteriously got shot 2 or 3 times in the back of the head. They called it a suicide, and he was murdered. There's no question about it. You're talking about Eddie Graham? Yes. Everybody says you committed suicide, and I say 100% no. You can't shoot yourself why would you shoot yourself? If you're going to commit suicide, why would you shoot yourself in the back of the head and do it 2 or 3 times? I looked it up, and it's like 800,000 to 1 that you could shoot yourself 3 times in the back of the head. Just think about that just for a second. I mean, you're going to... Is that what the autopsy revealed that he was... Boom, 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 3 times. It just can't happen. So the autopsy revealed that he was shot... I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened. I don't even think they performed an autopsy. I just think that he said he was depressed. And when he was depressed, that he committed suicide.
It's interesting you mentioned Eddie Graham. I mean, his son, Mike Graham, also later on, the reports say that he committed suicide as well.
Reports can say whatever they want to say. Reports also can say that he had 1,100,000 reasons not to commit suicide because he had just sold the entire Florida Championship Wrestling tapes, TV taping, to Vince. So he had plenty of reasons to live, over 1 million reasons to live. And he also was shot in the back of the head twice, multiple times. Whenever there's a multiple shot, it's almost impossible to get the second one off in the back of the head. Right. So I question that one too. I think the only suicide was with Mike's son. I think that's legitimate suicide. And he was depressed.
So the other Von Erich kids, I mean, fans widely call it the Von Erich curse. I mean, and you've been with the Von Erichs and Fritz working for them. What were your initial impressions of the Fritz's sons, Kerry and Mike and David?
They were all good kids. They were all good, real, very nice, very polite. And when Fritz got me down there, the original Billy Jack, who has now passed away, Tom Laughlin, came down. So Fritz had me kind of set up. Tom Laughlin came down to I believe it was Dallas-Fort Worth. I don't think it was a Sportatorium. I think it was Dallas-Fort Worth. Could have been a Dallas Sportatorium. Don't know. But he came down and said, "You got to change your name from Billy Jack. I don't want you to use my name anymore," infringing on the movie Billy Jack. And so I convinced him. I said, "What if I went as Billy Jack Haynes?" And he said, "Okay, you can do that." So that's what I did, and that's why I continued to use it. I'm glad I did because it's got my dad's last name in it.
You went back to Portland in 1986, and then abruptly you went to WWE. Did you give Don Owens any notice because you were champ at the time?
Oh yeah, I always gave Don notice. You know,
Was he supportive of you? I'm sorry, was Don Owens supportive of you before you went to work for New York?
No, he was not supportive of that. He didn't like that at all. He did not like Vince McMahon. I mean, nobody. Harley Race didn't like him. Jerry Lawler didn't like him. I mean, you can go on and on with these promoters. There's an unwritten rule that you do not go in the backyard of other wrestlers, promotions. And Vince McMahon broke that law, and when his father passed away, he right away started going into the backyards and eventually knocked everybody out, and there was no more kayfabe in the business. You know what kayfabe?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, whereas you don't want to talk smart in front of somebody, and now everybody knows what's going on. They're looking at me.
This interview wouldn't have happened in 1986.
No, never.
How did you wind up working for World Wrestling Federation?
Well, the legitimate reason at that time was my father, my blind father. You know, I really wanted to know who my biological father was because I really don't know. It could be one of 5 people. Now we've narrowed it down to one of 3. You know, in 1952, there was a boxer named Willie Nelson or Harold Penland who was really good. And Rocky Marciano's manager's name was Al Well. And he had just won the world title, and Charlie Goldman was his trainer. Now, I'm a big boxing buff, you know, and fighting's been my whole life and a lot of my family. And Harold Penland was one of the best amateurs to come out of Portland, Oregon. Well, they flew him down, and Lenny Montana came and got my mother and Harold Penland and flew him down. And Vince Sr. and Jess McMahon, the grandpa, was still alive at the time. And it was at Madison Square Garden. 52, Rocky Marciano won the title. And right at that time, 52, you do the math, in October, then you go November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. That's 9 months. And I've talked to both Lenny Montana, and he told me that, yeah, and Lenny Montana and Vince Sr. both had an affair with my mother. So Vince, you look at, Vince knows that I could be his half brother, and that's what scares him half to death. That's why I said for him to take a DNA test. I mean, I don't want none of your money, Vince. I just want to know if you're my half brother. If not, we'll go on to Lenny Montana or whoever. I want to find out my biological father before I die, even though my blind father was my dad. I mean, he raised me, and I love him with all my heart. He's the man.
Your blind father, is he still alive?
No, he passed away on my 40th birthday.
Oh, on your 40th birthday?
Yeah, 1993. And he was the man. Don't get me wrong. He's my father no matter what. I just wanted to find out like a lot of people do.
Did you ever tell Vince McMahon this? Or?
Vince already knows. Yeah, Vince knows.
That there's a possibility.
Yeah, there's a possibility. But he's never going to come forward. He's never going to take a DNA test. I would love for him to, and if he is, hey, I'm still going to sue his ass,
So no Thanksgiving dinner if he's your brother.
No, because he's corrupt. He's corrupt. And you asked me earlier about Donald Trump, and a lot of people think, hey, Make America Great Again hat. I had in Portland, Oregon, I had a great Make America Great Again hat, and a guy slapped it off my head,
Did you beat the shit out of him?
No, I didn't. I'm a little bit too old for that. But another guy.
But 20 years ago, full Nelson, he's done.
Yeah, it would have been a different ball game. But I found God in my heart after Tyrone Woods died in Benghazi. He worked at my gym, and he died over there. He was one of the two guys that were on the roof in the movie 13 Hours. You guys can look it up. Tyrone Snowden Woods. And he was up there 13 hours. I don't know, he got shot like 72 times. They never showed the autopsy or whatever, but I mean, they just got annihilated up there, and it was a political thing. And Obama and Hillary Clinton could have stopped that real easy, but they just let him go up there and get killed for no reason. I mean, they're just guinea pigs up there.
Touching back to when you made your debut for WWE in 1986, who called you? How did that come about?
The WWE?
or WWF at the time, World Wrestling Federation.
The guy who got a hold of me was, because I wasn't going to go in, but it was George Scott, who's now deceased. Good guy, and he had a brother named Sandy Scott, and then Roddy Piper, had convinced me to go in, and Roddy knew my dad. Roddy loved my dad a lot.
Who were the first people that you met first? Was it Vince? Like, who did you speak with? What were you promised, if anything?
Wasn't promised anything. I just wanted to go in and actually do something in the pro wrestling industry, and instead of be a drug runner. Mm-hmm. And that's because that's really what I was. I got a lot of guys high and addicted, a lot of pro wrestlers addicted, just like Vince did. So in a way, I'm no better than Vince. In fact, I might even be worse because I sold cocaine. He got into the pain and steroids, pain industry and steroids.
Yeah. You mentioned steroids. How influential do you think was superstar Billy Graham to a lot of wrestlers? Even Billy Graham himself has said how he was influential and that it bothered him that a lot of guys patterned themselves after him. Do you think he was influential with the steroid use?
Billy and I worked a major angle in '84 in Florida Championship Wrestling, and he's one of the guys that you can't help but love. And I still, to this day, I don't know how Billy's still alive because of his liver, but he just keeps on kicking it, man, and I'm really proud of him. And it was Billy Graham was inspirational in a lot of ways. I said before on an interview when I was high on pain medication, which I'm not no more, but he stole the gimmick away from Billy Graham. Hulk Hogan did. He did the whole sideburn, and I said that Hulk Hogan should be man enough to give him 10% of his career.
Well, Hogan even admitted in his book, I mean, he took a lot of the tie-dye, a lot of the characteristics from Billy Graham. So he says it in his book.
Well, did he say in his book that he paid him 10% of his money?
No, I don't think so.
Well, then that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't you agree? If you steal somebody's gimmick, it's like a commission. You should get a commission, you kickback. And he didn't give it to him. And You don't steal another man's gimmick. It's an unwritten rule again in pro wrestling. You don't steal a man's gimmick.
When you went to WWE, Hulk Hogan was at the top of his game. He was Vince's top guy. What do you think of Hulk Hogan in the 80s, or in general?
You know, I don't know what to say to that. He let a lot of guys down. You know, he had a major league ego. Randy Macho Man Savage and I, we confronted him on that, and he, back in the day, you know, it backed him down and so forth. Randy has now passed away. Hercules had a problem. He has now passed away. So I'm speaking for a lot of guys that have passed away. Kurt Hennig passed away. So why am I still alive? I don't know. I don't know why I'm still alive. I got an aortic aneurysm. I'm going to have open heart surgery in August, I think it is, of 2019. That might be the end of me. Don't know.
You mentioned like about a decade ago that during an interview, like this might be, by the time you watch this might be the last time. Do you expect the other shoe to drop at times? Is that the mentality? Like, do you feel like you can go? I mean, everybody knows that they can go at any point, but why do you feel strongly that at any point in time that something can happen to you?
Because, very good question. There's another tag team partner and probably the greatest athletic family of all time, and they don't get the credit for it. But Ken Patera, the Patera family, the entire family. He was the first man in the military press 500 pounds, went to the Olympics. I think he won a gold medal. I might be wrong on that, maybe it was a silver. But everybody in that family played pro football for one family. And then Jack Patera coached the Seattle Seahawks for like 8 years. So, I mean, you talk about talent. Well, I seen an interview that Kenny did, and he'd been drinking a little bit, and my name was brought up. And he goes, what do you think of Billy Jack? And I didn't know what he's going to say, you know. He goes, Billy Jack's a criminal. And he's exactly right. I am a criminal, and I got away with it for years, just like Vince did. So, in all, the lawsuit, everything, I am no better than Vince McMahon. But the whole thing is Vince McMahon's a billionaire, and he's the one that put all the food on the table for everybody to go ahead and eat, which I'm talking about the pain pills and all that. I got hooked. A lot of guys got hooked. I don't know how many guys overdosed, but they say, oh no, he had a heart attack at 33 or 42 or whatever.
Talking about like billions of dollars, have you ever seen, I wanted you to see if you could diffuse some of these rumors. On the Wikipedia page for you, it says that you are worth $13 million.
Well, at one time I had almost 4 or 5 gallon drums full of silver dollars. And it was estimated worth around $6 million, about 6 to 8 million. But I would never exchange overseas, you know, into these accounts. But yeah, at one time I was worth a lot of money in the drug industry. But as far as now, I'm on SSI, Social Security, and food stamps.
So for a lot of these people, I think that you're a multi-millionaire and...
No. No, I'm ashamed to say I'm not. I'm, you know, I did pay my taxes, so forth. I do deserve what I'm getting. And where I'm coming from, I think I deserve too. But as far as the sexual abuse and stuff like that, I think something that Vince needs to cope with, and his entire organization. And Pat Patterson, I want to tell you this, the biggest joke of all is when Pat Patterson and Jimmy Hart, they were on this house show. They did a thing in the house,
Legends
and Roddy
House.
told me about this.
Legends House.
And then Roddy got on tape and even admitted he was raped by Pat Patterson. I don't know if you've ever seen that tape. There's a tape out there, you know, and he goes on, it kind of rambles a little bit. But yeah.
Like
you
he
know,
doesn't say it particularly, but it was a kayfabe commentary one, the good friend Sean Oliver. There was a part in Timeline 1984 where WWE where he mentions like he just felt uncomfortable. He never really dives into the whole. But I get it.
Just trust me on it, man. I mean, I know Roddy. I went down the road with Roddy for almost 40 years. Roddy was raped by Pat Patterson and a lot of the guys in the WWE when he was younger. If they want to deny it, they can deny it. But here's the thing to show really back my play on this. They had this house, and all of a sudden, here comes Pat Patterson, like a couple of years ago, saying, "Guys, I don't know what I'm doing. I got to come out. I'm gay. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." And then Jimmy Hart puts his arm around him, and oh man, well, everybody knows he's been gay for 40, 50 years. And he's been put in that position by Vince McMahon, and has taken advantage of a lot of wrestlers, one of them including me. And if they can do it to me, they can do it to anybody. If they can do it to Hercules, to Rick Rude, to Brady Boone, I can go on and on. They know it's the truth, but hey, what are they going to do about it? Tom Zink ended up probably committing suicide over it. So it can happen, it does happen, and it will continue to happen as long as Pat Patterson works there at WWE.
Well, Terry Garvin and Mel Phillips, they were two of the like widely known or accused, or the reports saying that they had with ring boys and things like that. What's your whole take on that situation? And they even led to a lawsuit, I believe. In
God, man, it's sick. It's sick because she's got the name of Mel Phillips and Terry Garvin. I was in the shower and Terry Garvin came by me and stuck his finger up my ass. And I didn't know who it was. I turned around and it was Garvin walking away. And I said, "If you ever do that again, I will kill you." And I meant every word of it. And this is before I was raped, and or whatever happened to me. I honestly don't know. All I know is I was sexually molested. But
who do you complain to when something like that happens in the shower? I mean, I'm talking. This would not happen in like IBM or at Apple. Like, I mean, somebody just putting their like. Who do you confide in? Like, the human resource. Who do you talk to when something like that transpires?
Well, once again, I don't want to make it look like to the viewer. And I know you got a lot of people on Facebook or whatever. What's YouTube? YouTube. It may come across like I'm being a victim. I don't want to be a victim. There's a lot of victims out there that are going to go to their grave being raped, and I was one of them. And I've decided I'm not going to go. I'm going to speak out before I die. There's going to be a book. There's already videos of if I'm murdered or if I'm taken out or if I die. My attorney's got these videos that will come out and it will put the truth all together. But the WWE is a very perverted company. That's why I said I don't want to be no part of the WWE Hall of Fame. And that's probably the reason right there. I just didn't know if I was going to come out and tell you or not. But when you mentioned Mel Phillips, and Terry Garvin and Pat Patterson, he tries to come across like, I just come out of the closet. I found out that I'm gay. You guys support me. My husband died and all this stuff. That's a bunch of bullshit because he's been noted gay for the last 4 decades. And so they played everybody off there, and Vince continues to play off it, and he's a billionaire. And the only thing I like about what's going on with Vince is Trump, Donald Trump. I think he's doing a great job. I used to be as far left as you can get. I mean, I was Saul Alinsky, you name it. I was as far left as you can get. Saul Alinsky, Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dorn, against the Vietnam War, all that stuff. Until Leah Remini with Scientology now is coming forward. It's a brainwashing process. And if you watch the Democrats today, it's really liberalism because they're all sticking together on the same issues. And they're all brainwashed. And I was one of them at that time. So I think with Donald Trump is, what is wrong with putting America first and doing things the legal right way? Everybody come over here as one. We all bleed red. We're all immigrants. So I mean, basically, we're all immigrants. And but if we don't do something pretty soon, we're going to be in a communist country, and everybody's going to be wearing the same clothes, eating the same food. The Constitution will be shredded. And I'm not trying to run for office like Jesse Ventura did a great job as governor, by the way, in Minnesota. But this isn't no conspiracy theory, man. This is 100% truth.
Would you vote for Jesse Ventura if he ran for president?
After the 4-year tour of another 4 years of Trump, yeah, I would. I think Ventura's a very honest, down-to-earth guy, and I agree with him on 9/11 and there's a lot of things that he says that make a lot of sense. If you see Building 47 go down on its own, they said there was a fire in the basement and it collapsed in 5 seconds. I mean, they expect you to believe that. In the Pentagon, they expect you a 300-foot wingspan plane hit it going 500 miles an hour, but all there is a little hole where it looks like a missile went through. If they can brainwash the public to believe in that, then they can brainwash the country to do anything. And so I think another crisis is in the making, so, you know, with the Bilderberg family. And but what can you do about it? Will one guy stand up? You got to stand up as a team, as a country. I mean, what is your race?
Coptic Orthodox.
Okay, and see me, I'm Indian, Italian, whatever. You know, my mother was Indian, Modoc, and so forth, and Jewish, everything. We're all in the same boat, and when Jesse Ventura became governor, it opened up a lot of minds, a lot of heads, and it can be done. But the powers to be, John F. Kennedy found out that he doesn't run the country. The CIA, they run the country. The FBI, they run the country, and they're going to do what they're going to do. And he didn't want to go to Vietnam, and they did. Kennedy is gone. That's my opinion, just my opinion.
Great. Going back to WWE, let's talk about, were you accepted by the WWE wrestlers in the locker room when you came in?
I was accepted as far as the cocaine, you know. Yeah, I mean,
you were not distributing these guys, were you?
Well, I was distributing to everybody. You know, I mean, that was my start. My start was back in Portland wrestling, and with Jimmy Snuka and the guys out there. You know, I mean, I'm naming names, guys that are passed away.
Jimmy Snuka recently passed, yeah.
But Playboy Buddy Rose. I mean, Kurt Hennig died of acute cocaine. I mean, it's there. It's there. It happened. You know, you got to cop to what you do. I did it. I didn't do coke. I've done painkillers, but I sold coke that killed people. And I have to live with that myself.
How long have you been clean from painkillers?
Oh, God, a whopping 3 months. And because I broke my wrist, my right wrist, and I got some at the emergency room. But
well, recreational use. I mean, not from hospital, thing like. I mean, recreational where you abuse them. Like
it's been a while. It's been a while. My in October, guy that I helped raise was overdosed on methadone, and it just absolutely broke me in half. So I'm dead against drugs right now. I don't want nothing to do with drugs. You
mentioned the late Hercules Hernandez. You had an epic match with him. You know, to see who was the master of the full Nelson that culminated at WrestleMania 3 at the Pontiac Silver in front of 93,000 plus. That was a really stiff match. I mean, going back watching it as a 7-year-old, I was just like, these guys are beating the living tar out of each other. What were your memories of that matchup? And you bled a lot in that match.
To be honest with you, it hurts. It hurts a great deal. I hold a lot of my pain in, and when I break down and cry, it's always pretty much by myself. And I've been doing a lot of that lately. And I look back at Hercules and Rick Rude and guys like that they're dead, and they're never coming back. You know, Roddy, Junkyard Dog. You can go on a list that will reach to 100. That's not normal. And between Vince and myself,
whose death hit you the hardest? Whose death hit you the hardest?
They all hit hard, but probably the hardest for me was Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, you know. And then there was Brian Adams too, was hard. Hercules, they're all hard. They're all hard. But see, the problem is Vince doesn't have a problem with it, whereas I've got a heart to it. And Vince doesn't have a heart to it. He has no soul to it. He's a billionaire now, and he's not going to be happy until everybody is dead from the old school. And while we're talking about the old school, I'm here today because of ESS Promotions, Eric Sims. And
good guy.
And I want to promote him because Eric goes out of his way to make sure that a guy like me gets a payday out there, and Iron Sheik, whoever he's with, doesn't make any difference. He loves the wrestlers from the old school, so he's never forgotten them. And I can see you're the same way. That you
That's
love
why
the
we
old
get
school.
along, Eric and I. He's a good guy.
And I see Eric, he's standing over there right now, and I just flew all the way out from Portland to Newark, New Jersey today to do this. And
we're welcome. We were happy to have you here in the studio with us.
well, I'm burned out. But you know what? I found out a lot about you and your character and
Thank
all
you.
that. And you're a great guy, and you got great behind the
you.
curtains here. Some great people that are helping you with these videos. But what I wish the people would do, and you got on it, was this on Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's right here.
If you go to Wikipedia and you look me up, it says that I've been married 3 times to 2 women I don't even know named Rita Pina.
I don't see it here, but yeah.
Okay,
I read that before as well. Yeah.
And there's another woman named Meredith Fletcher. I don't even know who they are, so I would, if someone knows how to go on Facebook or Wikipedia, get that off there, would you? I mean, I could do it myself, I guess, but you guys know what you're doing out there. It's not true, and
Something from your Wikipedia, I'm reading it right here. It says in March 16, 2013, Billy Jack Haynes was hospitalized because he was suffering from an aneurysm and liver and kidney issues. Is that true?
that's true. That part is true. And 2013, I was having problems breathing. And what aortic aneurysm is, it's like a blown tire to your main thrombosis of your heart. There's a vein that goes up through your heart. It's about right here, and it's got like a little blown tire. I had to have open heart surgery in August. And I asked my doctor, I said,
You had a bypass or stent?
I haven't had nothing yet.
Oh, no, nothing. Oh, this hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet. And I was supposed to happen in October. That's when my buddy died. So I need to get in there and do it, or I'm not going to be around here. I'll be like Bobby Heenan, another close friend who passed away from throat cancer. But yeah, life's not promised to anybody. I mean, all you out there, it's not promised. But what you want to do when you do these shoot interviews is you say what you want to about me, but one thing for sure, I'm not afraid to come in front of this camera and tell you the truth as I lived it. And either you're going to believe it or you're not going to believe it. All you got to do is go back and check on everything that I'm saying here, and you'll see that it's the truth. All you got to do is do your homework. And it's as simple as that. I'm not claiming to be a saint. I'm not. I made a lot of mistakes in my life. And when I grow up, I want to be just like you and Eric Sims. I don't want to be like Vince McMahon. I just want to know if he's
I would love to have Vince McMahon's
my
money.
half brother. Well,
Going back to the WrestleMania 3, I mean, was that the largest crowd you wrestled in front of?
yeah.
What was that like, looking at that crowd in Pontiac Silverdome?
Here you go. I got to be honest with you again. Back in the dressing room, the Michigan State Police were guarding the doors because every wrestler should tell you, if they don't tell you, they're lying, that a lot of drugs was going on back there.
During WrestleMania 3?
Yeah, you were very preparing for their... Look at, the entire league back then was like Yankee Doodle Dandy. I mean, the guys had to cut... Everybody that I knew was seriously hurt, bad. And they had to go out there and wrestle, so they had to get their drugs in them to go ahead and participate. And that's the way it was on a daily basis. If it wasn't that, it was steroids. And Vince was the catalyst of all of it. He gave us to doctors without prescriptions, like I said before. That's illegal. So he bypassed a lot of things too. Look at, I sold cocaine. Did I have a prescription for it? No. So I'm just as guilty as Vince. I'm not trying to say I'm not. We're both guilty, okay?
Did you ever witness steroid abuse in the locker room?
As far as physical?
Physical, like actually see somebody, look, without, you don't have to mention names, we don't want to get anybody into any, legal issues or anything like that. But did you actually ever see anyone inject a needle?
Oh, in the locker room?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man. I mean, it's like dartboards in there. Anybody would tell you that. I mean, Billy Graham has said that many times, and I'll say it. It just happens. It happens in baseball. Look at Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and was it Barry Bonds back in '98. It happens. We're only human beings, and since it's not a sport that you can actually bet on legitimately, they take it with a grain of salt. But when you get into baseball, football, whatever, if you don't take steroids, you're not gonna make that big payday. I seen where Laurinaitis, who's the Road Warrior Animal's son, played in the NFL for 8 years, and I watched him at Ohio State, and that's one kid. I tell you, I don't know if he took steroids or not. I don't think he did. I think if he did, he sure fooled me. So he made it on pure talent alone, and that's a rarity to do.
He's definitely talented, absolutely.
You know, and he played in the NFL for 8 years, smart, invested his money, and he's on our lawsuit too, Road Warrior Animal.
Here's a fan question from Instagram. What do you think of the LJN action figure that was made of you in the 80s? What was the process like? How were you compensated for that?
We were compensated by one check. You know, you got a check for it.
You got one check?
A one-time check. And then you're supposed to get royalties, and the royalties never came after that one-time check. So Vince considered us as independent contractors, and that's where the lawsuit come in and got nasty, because we're independent contractors. Well, if we're independent contractors, that means that we pay for everything, which we should have won the lawsuit just on that merit alone, because every airline ticket that we got, Vince McMahon himself paid for. He had the booking sheet that said you're supposed to be in the Boston Garden, the LA Forum, Fort Worth, Texas, Montreal Forum. So we had booking sheets with every week our airline tickets. So how are we independent contractors if he's telling us where to go, buying the ticket for us, and then in the finish of the match he'll tell who wins, who loses? We're not independent of anything. He's got complete control over everybody in the pro wrestling industry, and to say we're independent contractors is just an absolute joke. And that's why our appellate court, we should win hands down. We haven't yet, but it's still going on. We lost the first round. I think we're going to win the entire lawsuit now. When
you guys, you mentioned Vince McMahon paid for everybody's travel. Did he also pay for the hotels as well and meals, or was that paid by the wrestlers?
Here's how I answer that. If you tell, okay, you got a job and you're making $10,000, $14,000 a week, that's a lot of money. That's $50,000 a month. I don't know who's going to turn down $50,000 a month in a job, okay? And he's got you in a booking sheet to be in Montreal. What are you going to do? Get a rental car and sleep in it? Or are you going to get a hotel room and sleep in it? Yeah, we paid for our own hotel room, and that's his weak-ass excuse that he has. See, they paid for their own hotel room. But he paid for the airline tickets, which were thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, we weren't going to sleep in the street. So that's the only thing that we paid for was our hotel room.
What about injuries? Like if you were injured, let's say, who would pay for the doctor bills or the surgery or things like that? Is it comes out of yourself, or does it come from the office?
We paid for it.
You paid for it.
Yeah, and that was another thing that Vince, I mean, just think about it. I mean, you tear your knee out, your elbow, your neck, concussions, whatever you get, you have to still go out there and work, and if you don't, you're fired. There's a guy there who's going to take your place, and a lot of wrestlers I've heard on interviews say the same thing I'm telling you right now. There's a guy waiting to take your spot because we have no protection with the union or whatever. So basically, before I die, this is what I want. This is what I would like to see. I'd like to see, I don't care if I get a dime or not, I really don't. The whole thing is I'd like to see a union so the wrestlers have protection. I'd like to see a 2-week vacation, at least, maybe even a month. If you're injured, time off with pay. Like NFL, if Brett Favre hurt his shoulder, you think they're going to let him go out there and throw a football?
Absolutely
He's
correct.
protected. And Vince has drawn all these huge crowds and all these billions of dollars. Why couldn't you just take care of, Vince, I'm going to look in the camera and just tell you right now, why couldn't you just take in and give the boys $100,000 or help the guys because they built your business from the bottom up, Don't worry about me. Even though I was one of the guys, I was one of the bad guys, like you. But the guys that were the good guys that helped you build it from the ground up are dying left and right. All you got to do is help their families. Give them some money. You're a billionaire. You mean to tell me you can't? You spent $100 million on your own wife's campaign to run for Senate of Connecticut in 2010 and 2012 because she was going to run for president against Hillary Clinton. But it never came about that way. Donald Trump ended up beating Hillary Clinton. So maybe it was supposed to work out that way. But take care of the guys that took care of you and made you the billionaire. That's all I'm asking. And give them a format, a union. I know I'm talking a lot out of the side of my mouth, whatever. But I think it's fair what I'm saying.
I agree that there should be an off season, and a lot of wrestlers have even had the same sentiments that you just touched on right now. That there should be an off season. That if guys are hurt and need vacation time, you can rotate guys. You could take guys off the road, put new guys in. But I think the argument probably from the office side is like if a guy like Hulk Hogan is on top, are they really going to take him off the shelf and put somebody? I mean, they've done it with him for movies like No Holds Barred. But I get the point that you're trying to make.
Yeah, I can't argue with what you just said because you made sense. You made a lot of sense. It's just that when you're a billionaire, you'd think he would be happy because he was worth nothing. When I was dealing drugs, I was worth more than Vince McMahon. So it's just now that I'm not. The point is, if I was a billionaire, I would take care of everybody, and the ones that have overdosed and died, take care of their families because they had little kids and aunts and uncles and so forth. Why doesn't he have a heart? Why don't you have a heart, Vince? I just don't understand why you don't. These guys that have died, they've left behind families, and I have no money or I'd do it. You got the money, do it. And maybe the lawsuit will be dropped. Just take and do it. Take care of the guys that helped you become a billionaire. You spent $100 million on your own wife. Spend some on the guys that made you get that $100 million, made you become a billionaire. And that's basically about it, unless you got something else.
I want to touch on towards the end of your run in WWE. Were you fired or did you quit? Because there were rumors that you were fired. I just want to know if you were fired or you quit.
So, listen, just 1 second.
Okay.
I got to get a drink of water because this is amazing. Okay, I told you earlier that in Rochester, the very last TV taping, that I did, that I was going to be pushed, and it was up to my knowledge anyway, I was going to be wrestling as a heel, which I wanted to do. I wanted to be a heel because people see me as a heel later on in life when my knees were gone, but I tried the best I could. And the heel was me. I was a bad guy. And I was going to wrestle Hulk Hogan in Trump Plaza in WrestleMania 4 and then retire. That's what I thought was all. They went up to the room, and all the guys did was they date raped me. They put something in my drink, and ended up there with my boots on and naked, like I told you, with something covering my groin, and was sperm all over my face, running in my mouth and so forth. So that's what I got. it took me, to digest that, it took me a month or two. I quit. That was it. That's why I quit. I didn't get fired. Anybody would quit over some kind of crap that happened to them like this, you know, but I kept it to myself, like I did a lot of things, and maybe that was the wrong thing to do, but I'm not keeping it to myself no more. That's what happened.
Because there were the reports that you were fired because you refused to do jobs, but that
Oh
wasn't.
God, I refuse to do jobs. Go, if that's a fact, go to the late Brad Armstrong and look up Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Everybody do this. Look up Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Super Bowl of Wrestling, August 4th, 1995. Brad Armstrong, who I'd never wrestled, the Armstrong family, a great family. And Brad and I had what I consider the greatest match that I've ever had in my life. And I put him over in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3, with his swinging neck breaker. That was his finish. So I have never been a non-businessman in my life. When it comes to business in pro wrestling, there's not a wrestler who can get up here and honestly look in the camera and say that Billy Jack or Billy Jack Haynes was not a businessman. I'm here defending the boys today. I signed up 40, I think it was 42 out of 61 wrestlers on my own on this lawsuit to help them. And they gladly signed on because they could make $1 million possibly or more. So, you know, to say I'm not a businessman is really a cheap shot, and probably started by Vince. No, I'm a businessman the whole way, and I always have been. But I just want to see all the wrestlers taken care of, the men and women, both. They deserve it, and the families.
How did you wind up working in WCW after your departure from WWF?
Well, now we're gonna go open another can of worms. You know, that has to do with this state right here, Oregon. That I wore Oregon on my tights and my trunks and so forth. Well, Oregon is one of the most corrupt states that there is out there. I mean, I found out the hard way. All the way from Phil Knight to the Governor Goldsmith. There's Governor Kitzhaber. I mean, you can go on and on. It's run by Democrats out there. And I was sure enough to go along with it all for years. I mean, Oregon, when you mention Oregon, Billy Jack is mentioning the same name as Oregon. Well, there was a woman out there named Pam Gaston, and who Randy Savage and I both knew from Sarasota, Florida. And she moved out here. And they had their kid taken away by child services and ended up going into child pornography. They took the kid away from them, and she fought to get that kid back, and I was with them the whole way. And next thing you know, she's found murdered in her mobile home, and that was in 2004. So shortly after that, there was an attempt on my life. I honestly got beat so bad, I don't remember if it was live or Memorex, but I defended her, and so that's why I'm saying you open up a whole different can of worms. There's a lot of corruption out there, and there's a lot of pedophilia out there, and I defend any kid at any time, at any place, because I am a child rape victim. And there's a lot of them out there, like I said. And the state of Oregon, you should be ashamed of yourself, what you did to Pam Gaston. And so I go to 1, 2, 3. I went to 5 attorneys who were, because I used to be a millionaire and I used to know all these attorneys. And every attorney that I went to, within 5.5 months, were found dead. You go right online and see it. And it was Shannon Connell, Des Connell, Harl Haas, Kelly, I mean, you got to go online to see it. And then tried to ruin my credibility, all because of child pedophilia. He won a $40 million judgment against the Boy Scouts, and then he was found dead also. So I think it was 6 attorneys. So this is the kind of stuff that I enjoy talking about, because if we're getting away from wrestling a little bit, but there is so much at the border that's why the border needs to be sealed up, because you bring in these child human trafficking. I found out about the human trafficking in Oregon. It was so bad that, hey man, I had to put my hands up, and that was it. Because I had been raped, and I seen all these other kids getting raped, and all these other kids being trafficked in, and all this child pornography and kiddie porn going on. And next thing you know, they tried to kill me.
You said there was an attempt on your life.
Yeah.
How certain are you that somebody tried to kill you?
Well, I was in critical condition, and I still to this day don't know what happened. I was sent over to a place, and I've since talked to the guy, and I think that maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe that wasn't the way it was, but I was sent over with the bogus statement that got me almost killed, and we'll get into that later. That will come up, but the wrestling, pornography, rape, child rape with the wrestlers, it's all real. I'm not going to sit here, I'm putting my life again on the line. I do all the time, until one day, someone's going to do a little research and read, whether it's the boys on the tracks, my involvement with life and cocaine. I don't know what it's going to take, but as far as pro wrestling goes, I'm the worst pro wrestler in the world, according to Vince McMahon, as far as the ratings go. So, Vince, just man up and do your end. Help the wrestlers out. Get them out of poverty. Kamal is dying. Just lost Bundy. All these guys that are dying around you, you just can't wait till they die. Is that what it is? I don't understand it. Help them out. You got billions, so help them.
WCW, we just touched on that.
Well, you just don't give up, do you?
I didn't want to. Yeah,
no. I told you to do it like this.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, going to WCW from WWF, how did you wind up there? Thoughts on Dusty Rhodes, Jim Herd, and the people that were working there at the time when you came in?
Listen, I said some things about Dusty Rhodes when I was high, and when you're wrong, when you're wrong, you're wrong, and I was wrong. I called Dusty a fat F and all this stuff like that, and that was a wrong thing for me to do. First of all, I want to apologize to the Rhodes family because I was high. I should have never said it. And Dusty was a great talent. How he did it, I don't know. He couldn't wrestle. He didn't have a body, but he had charisma and he could rap. So he made it on 2 captions and made it all the way to the top. He was just like Roddy. Roddy could work on top of it. Roddy and Dusty, I was telling Eric Sims on the way over here today that those 2 guys, probably the best 2 rappers in pro wrestling history.
While we're on the subject, Eric Sims, did he treat you to dinner?
He did.
Eric, you pick up the tab or what? All right.
He picked up the tab and
there's no BS with ESS. I love it.
ESS is the best, man.
Off topic, Eric, Eric gets a lot of flack from a lot of people, but you know what? Out of everybody I've dealt with, he's one of the most, I'll say it on camera, one of the most professional people. If he says something, it is what it is. Whether you like to hear it or not. That's what I like about him. He's very old school.
He rules the old. What is it, Eric? You rule the old school. How did I say that to you the other day?
Something like that.
Okay. ESS. Eric Sims rules the old school, and that's the way it is. He cares about us just like you do. And hey, look I'm alive right now. I could very easily. This is taped. I could be dead tomorrow, the next day. So. Don't take this with a grain of salt. What I've told you is the truth. All you got to do is dig into it a little bit yourself. Go back to Oregon. You want to see these attorneys that were all suddenly dead? It happened. It's real. Child human trafficking at the border is real. Communism is real. I mean, that's what you want to be, and you shred the Constitution. I don't want it. I want the Constitution to be in place for everybody. So if it's not, then we're going to be a third world communist country. So, you know, hey, I'm fighting. I'm a Donald J. Trump guy. I'm a Trumper. So what do you want to do about it? Somebody want to do something about it? Do it. At least I'm man enough to admit it. These closet people, I don't get it. Come out of the closet.
Going back to WCW.
And then you get to be like Jerry Lewis. And I'm Dean Martin.
No, I wanted to mention, because a lot of people don't know that in your career you did wrestle for WCW. I mean, I looked it up, but you wrestled as Black Blood. How did that character come about?
Oh, that was the Black Underground. And I came up with the name, and it was my way of saying to stick it up your ass. Because I was told where and who and what, everything back then, to shut up about certain things. I was forced out to Hood River, Oregon for 2.5 years away from my father and my blind dad. And I just got to the point where I couldn't take it no more. I went out there and almost signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Ted Turner with no knee. So, I mean, but yeah, that's how that started.
How long were you in WCW?
I was there 4 or 5 times. I was there for Ted Turner back when he first started. I think Rick Rude and I had a match in '84 there on WTBS. They fly us in from Florida, and which was great. You know, I love working with Rick Rude and Hercules. And one thing about pro wrestling that I got to do was I got to wrestle with the finest talent that pro wrestling had. So, you know, you did learn a lot. And Dynamite Kid, who just passed away, was another guy who helped train me in Calgary.
What were the differences or similarities of locker rooms in WWE and WCW when you worked at both?
What's the similarities?
Or differences, if there were any. Like, were there any differences or similarities when you worked at WWE and WCW? Like how the companies were ran, management?
That's a fair question. Vince ran with an iron fist, like that. You know, I mean, and he got things done. You got to give Vince props in a lot of ways. He did get things done, but the way he went about doing it was wrong. The way I went about doing it with cocaine was wrong. The way he wanted to do it with painkillers and steroids without prescriptions was wrong. And all these deaths that all happened it's because of Vince and because of me that these guys died at a young age. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm just as guilty as Vince. But he's the one with the money. Pay the guys what they got coming. And this lawsuit will go away.
You mentioned Ravishing Rick Rude. You worked with him a lot. I can imagine his death hit you hard, but at the time, I think he passed away in 1999. Were you surprised by his death? I mean, at the age I think he was only 40 years old or 39 at the time when he passed.
Well, no, because Rick was hurt really bad. He hurt his neck really bad, and his elbows were shot, and he got on painkillers quite a bit. And you know, I do not want to belittle him whatsoever. Right. It's just that it's to the point where I know exactly where he's coming from, and to where I took 30, 40 a day, and I almost overdosed several times. And you can do it accidentally, or you can just commit suicide. You know, I don't know, or you can be murdered.
Yeah. What do you think of The Undertaker? We never heard you on interviews talk about The Undertaker at all.
I don't know him.
Oh, you don't know him?
I have never met him. I know he's a great worker and all that, but I have just never met him.
You never crossed paths with him? You never worked with him?
Never did. I know he was Mark Callis in WCW, but I never got a chance to work with him.
All right, fair enough. How about Shawn Michaels early in his career?
Well, that's a loaded question. Shawn Michaels had his very first match with me in W World Class Wrestling, and he'd done a job for me very professionally in about a minute, I think it was. We shook hands afterwards, and he had a lot of talent. Look where he's at today.
Did you see the talent early on? Did you get a glimpse of that? This guy, oh, this guy's talented.
This guy is talented. There's no question about it. He had a lot of talent, and you could see he was going places.
Now, you were trained by his father, but how about Bret the Hitman Hart? Did you ever cross paths with him? Did you ever work with him?
Yeah, I worked with him in Madison Square Garden, and in fact, he did a job. He did a job with a full Nelson for me. It's on tape in Madison Square Garden with Davey Boy Smith and me and him and Jim, the late Jim D'Anville Neidhart. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was a good guy and everything. It's just that Bret had to know that his own son was killed. I mean, they got a 2-ton safety bracket that catches you if you do fall. That's snapped, so someone doctored with it, and he falls 70 feet to his death.
You believe Owen Hart's accident was a murder?
I do, because just the simple fact that Bret was going nuts over it, and then all of a sudden Vince, out of his own pocket, gave $18 million to the Hart family and didn't let the insurance settle it. So that was a big red flag for me. So Vince paid out of his own pocket, and you see he's not paying nothing to any of the wrestlers that needed, like Kamala, who lost both of his legs. You know, all he needed was $25,000 to save his legs, and Vince wouldn't even pay for that. So to pay all that, to pay $18 million to the Hart family, it was a red flag for me, and to a lot of people, but people are afraid to talk about it.
We're gonna wind it down with some more fan questions.
Are you sure? Now, you sure we wind it down? Eric's going to sleep over there.
This is good stuff here, Eric. Yeah. There's a story of you mentioned Bryan Adams earlier, who's crushed in Demolition. He played a rib on you regarding you coming back to WWE during a tryout. Is there a story behind that? Is that true, or is that just a rumor?
That was back in the heyday. Yeah, that's one that hurt. That's one that hurt a lot. Bryan is not with us no more, and so that hurts. That hurts because.
But what was the rib that was played?
Well, the rib that was played was in 1992, right after this trial in Oregon. It was a Michael Franke murder trial. And basically at that time, you know, I was set free. They were trying to set me up to take the fall for it. And a wrestler named Coco Samoa, who was Jimmy Snuka's brother, tipped me off the day before, or I'd be sitting in prison or dead right now. So I didn't take the bait. But the year afterwards, I got Bryan in the WWF. And he returned the favor to me and said that Vince wants me and so forth. And God, it felt great to be wanted again. And my dad said to go ahead and do it, you know, my blind dad. And so I went down there. I drove 2,000 miles down there. And I didn't get a chance to wrestle in Texas. I think it was Lubbock. And the next night I didn't get a chance to wrestle. And then I went ballistic. You know, I didn't know who was behind it, whether it was Vince, whether it was Bryan, whether it was Curt Hennig. I don't know who it was.
You got a call saying to come and do a tryout, and you thought it was somebody from the office. That's what happened?
No, it was a solid deal. You know, I was told by Bryan Adams that I had a tryout. And so, you know, there's a word called you treat it like a mark. You know, I never treated him nothing but other than professional. But I went down there and put that black blood gimmick on and tried to do the best I could to sell Vince on it and get a $500,000 a year contract for 4 years, I think it was, $2 million. And I heard a few of the boys giggle. I kind of felt a little weird about that. And the next thing you know, Vince shut the door behind him, and I knocked on the door and he locked it. And they put something up against it, so I kicked the door and told Vince to get his ass out. He wouldn't do it, so I headed out to my truck. And the only question is that I had 3 weapons. You know, I had a Glock, a 9mm, and a .38 caliber, I think. What weapon did I get? Well, you know what? It's been, I don't know how long, almost 30 years ago. So I think it was a 9mm. Could have been a .38 caliber. Could have been the Glock. But I went out there with a gun. And if it wasn't for Hercules Hernandez, I would.
What was your intention?
My intention was to go in and blow Vince's brains out. Vince McMahon's brains out. Probably Brian Adams, maybe Kurt Hennig, maybe who knows? Whoever was in my way that had me, they broke me. They broke my spirit. You know, I was almost 40 years old, and I just drove 2,200 miles. People might think this is a crazy thing. I look back, and it was one hell of a rib. And
you can't look back on it now and laugh about it. I mean, it's
no,
not
it's
a
not.
laughing.
It's not funny because
not funny.
they've all passed away.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, the rib was pulled on me, nobody else. And I reacted the way I did. And if Hercules doesn't grab me and keep me from going further, well, Vince wouldn't have to worry about this lawsuit or whatever it is today. He didn't have to worry about it. And I'd be dead too. I'd blew my head off because that's the position I was in. At that time, I was addicted to drugs, addicted to painkillers.
What were your thoughts of, here's another question, what were your thoughts of Brian Christopher's death?
I'm sad. I'm sad because here's another piece of shit. Here's a piece of work for you. Jerry the King Lawler, you know, another child molester, you know, with a 12-year-old girl, I think it was. And maybe 13 maybe. So I don't care for Lawler. He should have been in prison. He went and paid $250,000 to get out of it. He got out of it. You got money, you can get out of anything. But no, I don't. You asked me, I told you.
You're not shy to tell, you know.
No, well, it's the truth.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody knows he molested a 12, 13-year-old girl. And he's still working for Vince McMahon, so that really tells a lot about Vince McMahon. I mean, Vince McMahon loves to be hoisted around all these pedophiles and perverted idiot asses, and that's I don't understand you, Vince. I kind of really hope you really aren't my my half brother. Now that you think about it.
If you were the head writer of WWE today, let's play devil advocate. If Vince McMahon gave you the position and said you're the head writer of WWE right now,
for God's sakes, is this ever going to end?
what are some of the things that you would change?
Well, first of all, I would change Pat Patterson's and about 8 of the other higher ups, including Vince, Jerry Lawler's underwear, so they'd be clean. That's one thing I would change, because as long as they got this here pervertedness and pedophilia working in the WWE, WWF, that's what I call it, it's sick. And if it's going to take a guy like me to do it, or people to say, oh, Billy Jack flew off the end again, check it out yourself. Like I told you, it's the truth. Everything I'm telling you is the truth. I have taken and driven a knife so far in my own back in this interview today, and I just want to put it all out there for everybody to digest, and you can have your own opinion. But get all the facts first, you know?
That actually brings us to the next question. You touched on it before. Your thoughts on Mel Phillips, Terry Garvin, and Pat Patterson?
Well, we're kind of rehashing.
Yeah, we're rehashing. Yeah.
But you know, my opinion on all of them is filth. You know, they love little kids, and when you love little kids, that means you're a pedophile. And if you're still working for the company that Vince owns, that means that Vince must be one too. Well, why would you want to surround yourself with all these your perverted people?
You've said in a previous interview, Vincent K. McMahon, that the K stands for killer. Do you believe Vince McMahon is a killer? Do you still feel that way in 2019?
Yes, without a doubt. I don't think he's done it. He's had it done. I don't think he's a killer, but I think he's had it done. And I think that Nancy Argentino in 1983 was one, because she was pregnant. She got pregnant, and or she said she was pregnant, and it could have been Hulk Hogan's, or it could have been Jimmy Snuka's, but they weren't about to take no chance. And next thing you know, Nancy Argentino was killed in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and that just came up like in 2015. They reopened the case, 30-some years later. And they're not going to reopen a case after 30-some years that they don't got something. But once again, there's the money. Money talks and bullshit walks. So obviously, nothing happened. I feel sorry for the Argentino family. I wish they had money to fight it. I think honestly that she was killed because she was pregnant. That would have ruined. Hey, he hadn't even had WrestleMania 1 yet. So Vince at that time was still stuck. A lot of money. He owed money at that time. He had no money of his own.
Our next question was about Iron Mike Sharpe. You had like a vicious backstage fight with him. Can you describe what happened?
That's one. That's
Great question.
One,
Whoever brought that up, because I had to actually look that up.
See, that's something that Mike really manned up on this, and he went in, and Vince at that point fired me. We did get into it in the ring, and we took it back to the dressing room. Well, Mike's a tough guy, real policeman, real tough guy, and caught me some good shots, And the whole thing is we respected each other enough after it was over that Vince fired me, and Mike went up and said, "Don't fire Billy Jack." I started the fight. So I got nothing but respect, and I know he passed away in, was it 2017?
Sometime around there.
January 17, 2017. And that's one where I went off on my own, and I broke down crying for 10 minutes. I'm not proud of this stuff, I'm not, my whole life, I've had to fight for basically anything and everything. And I've had to fight my way out, set my dad on a toilet and wipe his ass because he couldn't. You think my dad wanted to go through that, being blind? You just lost your dad, so you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
And so there's something there I could go into, a whole different can of worms, and that would take way too long. But I would eat a handful of feces to have saved my blind dad from anything back then. And guys like Mike that had guts like he did, I had nothing but respect for.
Seems like you're still wrestling with what happened at that time, and this was like 25, 30 years ago. Yeah. Randy
Savage, him dying, it hurts. Crush really just cut my heart out, and there's a lot. We're just going to rehash. We're going to rehash now, and I'm to a breaking point, and I probably better at this time stop because I'm ready to crack, and I hope I've given you a good interview. And you're.
We'll close it out with what's your.
You're a class act guy, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that coming from you. We'll close it out with what is your favorite moment in your career?
Well, I want teeth. No, my goal is to get teeth.
Isaac Yankem.
Isaac Yankem. Yeah, I got 16 teeth knocked out in 2006. People don't even know about that either, but that was mine. Let me tell you, man, it hurt the next couple days, if you know what I'm saying.
That was your favorite moment in wrestling?
Well, that's not one of my favorite moments in wrestling, but I'm just saying, you said something about, did you mention teeth or did I?
No, you mentioned that.
Okay, well, so that shows how tired I'm getting. But go ahead and answer me the question again.
What was your favorite moment in your career?
It had to be WrestleMania 3, with Vince McMahon. He's put together a great show. Hey, look, the guy's a genius. I'm not going to deny that he's not a genius. He's an absolute genius. But just the way he goes about things, is totally back-ass wrong. And then you got the perversion and all that goes with it.
Billy Jack Haynes, how do you want to be remembered?
I don't even know if I really want to be remembered in professional wrestling. I mean, professional wrestling and I are just kind of an accident that happened. the boxing was more or less my love and everything. But then when I say that and I see all the stuff that you've worked on and I signed some stuff for you, it actually made me feel good today. You know, it made me feel like I was worth something for the first time in a long time. Because, you know, you got a lot of guilt when you deal cocaine to people and they become addicted. And then they want to come to you for more and you don't want to sell it to them and you're going to go somewhere else anyway. So you end up selling it to them anyway. And it just becomes a never-ending wheel. And Vince knows exactly what I'm talking about. Right, Vince? And so, yeah, I'll just say this. I'm at the bottom of the list in pro wrestling. If you don't believe me, go to Cage Match, and you'll see me rated at 3.24 or 3.5, the lowest rated ever. And Vince controls all that, you know. And I don't care about the ego part of pro wrestling, you know. But at one time I was ranked #1 or #2 in the world. So something had to go wrong somewhere in between.
You're on the cover of the program with Hulk Hogan, Wendy Richter, and Barry Windham that you signed.
It's just it's all, you know what it is? It's all a work. That's what it is. It's a work. The promoter makes or breaks you, says who wins, says who loses. So the fans, I got it. So, you know, the fans, they look at that and they believe it. The best ambassador we got is The Rock. You know, The Rock. I know The Rock, Dwayne Johnson's dad, Rocky Johnson. He is by far, if you see him, he's got every tool to the trade that there is. So does Stone Cold if he just stopped hitting women, you know. He's got it too. Yeah, there is ambassadors out there, but Vince McMahon Jr. isn't one of them.
Do you have a final word you'd like to say to your fans?
I think I about said it all. I want to say hi to the staff back there. You guys have done a great job, and you know, and you've done a great job. And once again, I'm sorry about your father.
I really appreciate that.
You know how I am, and
you're very genuine. And I really do appreciate that.
And what I said today, that I know, as far as I know, is 100% truth. Believe me, I threw my own ass under the bus too. But Vince has got to come forward and take care of the wrestlers, and they're dying at a rate there's going to be nobody left pretty soon. And when I talked to Bobby Heenan, I'll say this real quickly. When I talked to Bobby Heenan about 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, he was very disappointed in Vince because Gorilla Monsoon, I think, had just passed, and Monsoon's son died in a car wreck.
That was in 1993, I believe. Right.
93.
Right.
That's the same year my blind father passed away. And he was so upset with Vince for you know, taking care of the wrestlers. You know, I mean, just give them something. Give them after they retire, do something, take care of them. And in Bobby Heenan, he had his own money, but you see the way he went out, his jaw was, he couldn't even talk. And it belittled Bobby so much that Bobby was just like me, except he couldn't be vocal because he couldn't speak. So when I spoke in my shoot interview, he gave me the double thumbs up. That the last one I did in 2009, he was for it. And so I just hope the people, if they want to remember me, remember the wrestlers. Form a union for the wrestlers so they don't have to go through this stuff with concussions and the CTE, like the NFL paid $1 billion to their football players. Take care of the wrestlers. That's all I ask. Want to remember me for that. Anything else as far as pro wrestling, I don't deserve mention of anything after selling cocaine like I did to so many pro wrestlers and getting them addicted. So Vince and I are in the same boat in it as far as that goes. But if I had the money, I'd do it. Vince, you got the money, take care of the wrestlers. So we don't got to sue you.
Billy Jack Haynes, thank you so much for joining us here in the studio. Thank you all for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment below, tell us what you think. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.